and the thing just figures itself out and does what it needs to do, that's fantastic. But there are some downsides as well. So the FlightOne that's on this, the FalcoX or FalcoX or whatever it is, it's running on an F411 processor. And as far as I know, they're working on really next-gen stuff, like really, truly next-gen stuff, which will use the power of the processor that they're using a lot as well. It doesn't quite have the F411 doesn't quite have the horsepower to do everything that they want it to do. But that being said, it does run on it, and it does run pretty nicely. Now, I'm personally not a fan of the way you tune it, and that's primarily because I'm just so used to Betaflight. I'm so used to dealing with that interface, and I'm also not a fan of their overall interface. It is still beta. They haven't really worked on it. It really doesn't have an interface. The whole interface is in the OSD. There really is no kind of desktop interface. It's just the same as looking into the OSD. And in that respect, I would say that there is a lot going on in the OSD. There's a lot of settings that you can mess with that can totally mess up the quad. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can screw it up pretty easily just randomly flipping the sticks around. And so the number one complaint I would have is I really wish they would just lock out 98% of all the things that you have access to in FlightOne in the OSD menu. If you want to access them, give us an advanced menu, that's fine, but get rid of all that stuff. The next thing I would complain about is the flight performance, actually. While it performs great on this, and it performs okay for the most part, it actually has a lot of the same issues that I have with Betaflight 4.x, and that is that my quads just bobble with it. I haven't tried RPM filtering on everything, and I'm not really a fan of requiring RPM filtering to make it work. And I just go back and run 3.5.7 on everything I have, and I don't care about the filters. I turn them all on. I'm not a racer. I don't need like the absolute pinnacle of control performance to do what I want to do. I love control performance, and I always look for it. But for the most part, the filters, to me, while they do impact your control perception and the ability to actually control the quad, it's not that bad on 3.5.7. It's actually pretty darn good. And so I would rather have code that is sort of stupid proof, that I can just throw on anything and the defaults work almost perfectly, than something that I have to sit there and tune and fiddle with for days to try and get it to fly just as good as 3.5.7. And so I'm not experienced with the way FlightOne tunes and the way you use FlightOne. I have looked through the menus. I know what a lot of things mean. I don't know what a lot of things mean. And I have attempted to tune things, but if anybody's tried to tune something, you still can't tune anything. It's still a pain to try and tune anything. And so I really wish that the defaults worked a little bit better on most quads, because I put it on a couple quads now, and the defaults just don't match that great. And I don't have the breadth of knowledge in coding and the back end to be able to comment on this, but it has the same issues as 4.1, where the not reliability, but the consistency across quads is not the same on basic F4 processors. I have not tried any of the new processors or new things that they're working on, which I expect to solve all of these problems completely through and through. But for now, the main issue is that at speed, my quad just bobbles. It just bobbles like it's a 7-inch in the wind, just bobbling about. And on my toothpicks, it does the same thing and bobbles about. I really hate it. I go back to 3.5.7, flies perfect. So for now, I'm still on 3.5.7. Emu Flight is also very, very good, but they also have just jacked up the access to controls in the system, and they've given you all these new numbers to deal with that you're just like, what do I do with this? And all I keep yelling at these people is, can you please simplify it? Get rid of this stuff. It's okay. Sacrifice the pinnacle of flight performance, or lock it out and give the pros, the true pros, and people that are racing and that want the absolute best and best, the ability to do all that stuff. But for the average person, for the every person, for me and people like me, I just want the thing to work well without any issues. I don't like tinkering with code. I don't like tuning these things. I just want them to work really nicely. And it's not impossible to make them work really nicely, and it would be great if we moved towards that direction. Now, the next complaint I would have, it's not really a complaint. The rate system is a little bit annoying. It's not really the rate system that's annoying, it's the defaults that are annoying. I would say the defaults should be 300 rotations per second, or degrees per second standard with a expo of 50 or 60, and I don't even know what the acro number does, so I can't even comment on that. But that's what I wish was the standard, because that's what works great for me. And even when you go from 2S to 3S, it gives you a totally different rate, which is nice, because if you're racing or doing something and you do run both 4S and 6S, you want to have the ability to have different rates, because maybe things are different with those two batteries and you use things differently. Great, but the defaults are also that. And they have a ton of defaults from a ton of pilots out there, but they're all different. And my preferred rate was race. So the race is 400 degrees per second, and I think it's 50 and 50 for the other two numbers. And I just use those because it takes too much time to scroll through all those numbers and get to the number that I want. Next annoyance is the OSD loadout. I don't know why the OSD stuff's at the top. I prefer it at the bottom. It's, again, annoying to go through all these locations on the screen to set up the OSD, but I guess it's the best they could do in OSD. And what I'm getting to is that I want to see a very clean, user-friendly, easy, computer-based GUI interface to set things up and set these basic settings very easily. Now, I am just a commenter commenting on these things, and I'm really just honestly full of it because I'm just saying things willy-nilly, and there is a lot of work that goes into all this stuff. For the most part, I really like where FlightOne is going. Their future looks great.